From the series by George Harrap and Co., Essays of Today and Yesterday, this is the book by J.B. Priestley. Excerpts and extractions of different articles brought together under one beautiful cover in this 1926 first edition. Let me read with you a curious grumble. Although we all have genuine and colossal grievances to air now, we have carried over from the years before the war the habit of grumbling about all manner of little things and making grievances out of trifles lighter than the passing gusts of wind. This absurd habit is best seen in that race apart, the newspaper correspondents, yours disgusted, indignant ratepayer, lover of fair play, and uncle pro bono and all. I believe that if the sun grew cold, the stars withered out of the sky, and the seas gave up strange monsters, these gentlemen would still be discovered sitting down to write to the paper about this or that nuisance, the shape of women's hats or the height of lampposts. The fact is, of course, that they are, for the most part, literary men, in embryo, persons with the writer's itch, who take a delight, comparatively innocent as our pleasures go, in seeing themselves in print. But it must be admitted that their grievances are often fantastic beyond belief. They came lately into my hands by some chance or other, probably in the packing of some parcel, a page of newspaper I never read, and at the head of the correspondence column there was a bold heading, "The Catalogue Nuisance." Then followed a most extraordinary complaint from a correspondent. This gentleman had been away for 3 weeks from his flat, and on his return he had discovered a number of catalogues that had been sent to him through the post. He is a bachelor, and it appears that many of these catalogues were addressed to his imaginary wife, a fact that seems to have made him particularly bitter. He goes on to condemn the whole business, declares that it may be good for the printing trade and the post office, but that it constitutes a particular nuisance especially to bachelors, and this is the catalogue nuisance. It seems to me a most astonishing grievance. There is something downright ungrateful, even perverse and morbid in such a grumble. Here is a man who has been away for 3 weeks, probably on holiday, and returns once more to the workaday world, the office and the dingy streets, and his cheerless bachelor flat. It is a depressing business, this returning. Everything is over. Nothing can happen. But stay, something has happened. A number of commercial gentlemen, those much maligned persons, have gone to the trouble and expense of sending quantities of quite good reading matter, illustrated, in many instances, by amusing pictures. There they lie, these bright catalogues, on the hall floor just behind the door. They are not like our friend's books. They do not demand to be read. They await their host's pleasure, and he may read them or burn them just as he pleases. They are not like the books of the season, for even if they are read, there will be no necessity to pass an opinion on them. People will not ask, "What do you think of so-and-so's new catalogue?" and stare at you if you say the wrong thing in reply. What could be better on this first evening, which promised to be such a dismal affair, than a few minutes given to unpacking and so forth, a good meal, a bright fire, some slippers and tobacco and an armchair, and then a pleasant, dreamy hour or so with the catalogues? This would be to return to an ideal city, to shop in a commercial utopia, for in the catalogues the real can be forgotten and the ideal is ever present. Nothing is useless or ugly or badly contrived. There are no sneering or scraping shop assistants at one's elbow. Whole shops are turned into neat little books for our good pleasure. But no, our man kicks these gifts about the hall and then sits down in a towering rage to write to the paper about the catalogue nuisance. It is this kind of treatment that sours commercial men and turns them into politicians. The fact that many of these catalogues were addressed to a wife that does not exist seems all in their favour to any reasonable man. To make it the basis of an additional grievance argues downright misogamy on the part of the grumbler. If the firms in question did it unintentionally, in ignorance of the circumstances, then they can hardly be said to have committed a crime. If, on the other hand, they knew what they were doing, as I suspect, then surely it was a pretty fancy to send news from the feminine kingdom to this ghostly lady. There is nothing at once more grossly and yet more subtly feminine than the catalogues from women's shops. Their furs, gowns, hats, stockings, perfumes, jewellery, and strange little knickknacks. These things speak of a world in which man is only a rumour, an uncouth shape on the horizon. Any man, not a misogynist, coming unexpectedly upon such gay tidings, fluting to all the eaves in London, must be suddenly possessed by a queer sense of wonder and a curious quick rush of tenderness. For behind all this lovely frippery is woman, unchanging and steady-eyed, dying daily that men might live. Would not that pleasant dreamy hour or so with the catalogues have been touched with sentiment, even a mild poetry, if the imaginary wife had been there too, looking over our man's shoulder as he laughingly turned the pages of her cunning lists? After such delicate play-acting, mellowing his savage and brutish state of bachelordom, if only for a little while, and allowing him, undeserving as he is, a tiny peep into the territories of Eve, if he had a spare pound note or two, a man might very well have a generous little impulse to buy a woman something, to put his finger on some place in the catalogue, go to his writing desk and see that some young niece or cousin is suddenly made happy by an unexpected, unbirthday present. But no, the catalogues are addressed to his wife, and he has no wife, and it's all a waste of other people's money and trouble, and a dreadful litter about the place, and it's time he wrote to the papers about it. I do not wish to be offensive to this gentleman, upon whose way of life I reflect more in sorrow than in anger, but I make so bold as to declare that it is perhaps as well that he is not married. I say this because it is clear from his conduct on this occasion that he would never understand or sympathise with a woman, for he has obviously no conception of that pleasure in little things, except writing to the papers, that plays such a part in feminine psychology. If he had, he would have enjoyed the catalogues, which give practically all women pleasure and not a few men. For my own part, I am ready to admit that I can enjoy glancing through lists and prices of things that I have no intention of buying. It is true that I even get more pleasure from catalogues of things that I might possibly buy at some time or other. Any thickhead, of course, can chase through a catalogue or price list of things that he is not only willing but anxious to buy. That is merely shopping, commerce of the grosser kind. There is no poetry in it. But I, for one, who buy very little and dislike the procedure and routine of purchase, will stare happily for hours at big catalogues of ironmongery, furniture, toys, motor cars, sailing boats, fishing tackle, garden seeds and carpenter's tools, particularly if they are illustrated as they usually are. I deliberately exclude lists of books, music, tobacco and wine, because there is always a chance of my being a purchaser of such things. And best of all are the catalogues from the big stores, the places that have departments for everything. The big stores should only be encountered in book form. In person, as it were, they are particularly distasteful to me. I have been dragged round them by members of that sex which is supposed to have been beaten down and crushed by ours for centuries. But only the sternest feminine command will get me there again. Left to myself, I should never buy anything in them, for they are so gross, opulent, bewildering, cosmopolitan, and somehow characterless, with all their crowds of liveried attendants, their lifts and staircases, their suggestion of a music hall without its geniality, that I only want to escape and not to buy. Their goods are not tempting. They do not ask to be bought, but have the air of being in some unholy kind of museum. I feel that the assistants may have been trained in the sinister art of salesmanship, but have not that love of the goods they sell that one finds among second-hand booksellers, tobacconists, and men in little tool shops. Buying a book or a cigar in such places is just the same sordid transaction that it is in a railway station. It is 1 degree better than the automatic machine, and that is all. The airs and graces, the gentle poetry of the older ways of commerce, particularly in artistic and lovable things, is not for big stores. But in book form, they are admirable. The very extent and variety of their range of goods, so bewildering in actuality, is decidedly an asset when we come to the catalogues, which are crowded with pictures, prices, descriptions, and numbered lists. If you are tired of one department, you have but to turn a page or so, and you are in the next. You may suit your mood. If you feel somewhat sad and stern, a man not to be trifled with, you may wander at will among the ironmongery. If you are frivolously inclined, you may choose either the confectionery or the parasol sections, or even go so far, as some do, as the lampshades or bentwood chairs. There was a time when Messrs. Gummage, to whom I willingly dedicate this essay, produced a catalogue that was like an epic written in the morning of the world. It was endless and had a million pictures. It was brimming over with cooking stoves and boxes of carpenter's tools and sets of conjuring tricks. And for any boy or man who was still a boy at heart, this catalogue occupied a place next to Robinson Crusoe, itself an artful catalogue, and Treasure Island. Yet I should not be surprised if within this next 2 years some monstrous schoolboy, having received one of these magnificent volumes from Messrs. Gummage or another, does not sit down to write to the papers which will head the column, "Catalogue nuisance again." Let us hope he too will grow up a misogynist, so that his race may be extinct.